Welcome back to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. I'm Ollie Hayes, joined today by James Pendleton, Stephen Hornby, and we're here at the Grand Old Lady in its final week, going through all of our Goodison heroes and just a little few memories of our time at Goodison Park. Fellas, how you feeling?
Emotional, yeah. It's weird being back when there's no game on, and yeah, it's so strange. Don't you only come back one more time, but yeah, it's nice anyway.
It is definitely a weird feeling seeing it so empty and feels a bit hollow almost. And also, of course, like the impending game on Sunday as well. It feels a bit different. It's fair to say.
Yeah, obviously, as we know, 6 days now to go until the Southampton game, Sunday, 12 p.m. kickoff. But we might as well start at the very beginning for Goodison and go through some of the greats of the Goodison legacy. We'll have to start with Dixie Dean. I think he's the first man that we have to talk about his legacy at Goodison Park. Talk to me. What do you know about that?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, we met at the statue today, and it's like you can't escape him, even though obviously he was gone long before any of us were even kind of around, let alone stop playing. But you can't escape him. He's everywhere in Goodison. I'm sure there'll be plenty there in the new ground, and obviously we all know he scored the 60 goals in the season, and it's never been kind of done before, and I'm sure it won't be done again for at least a very long time. So it is obviously a legend and an icon, someone we can all kind of at least look towards, even if we didn't get to see him play, obviously.
Without a doubt. I mean, I'm speaking about him the other day, and really the sort of legacy that he's left behind in football, and also when people talk about this ground, they always seem to talk about him as well. So that's definitely a huge piece of it. But of course, that was only the beginning. There was plenty more after.
True, there is plenty more. Obviously, 60 goals in the season. Erling Haaland got very close in recent seasons, but yeah, as you said, the likelihood of that being beaten in a single season, it's never going to happen again. So it writes his name in the legacy and writes his name in English football history. But as you said, there's plenty more to talk about from Goodison Park, including that 85 team, which we have to talk about as well.
Well, the 85 team, we saw them on the pitch, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago? And really, the legacy they've left behind for a generation of supporters as well is huge. Something that we're all a bit too young to have seen at the time, but I know that Evertonians always talk about them as one of the real great teams.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you say they obviously a bit before our time still, but that film that they did in 2019, I think, the Rob Sloan Howard's Way one, I think that kind of really made it hit home for everyone who maybe didn't get to see the team players. Like, you're watching that, you're emotional, even for people who've never seen actually play football live or didn't get to experience or whatever. But it's still really nice to kind of watch that back. You get a real connection to the team, and obviously it's great that they've come out to the pitch this season. And obviously a lot of them are still very kind of visible on social media and what, like Neville Southall, Peter Reid, etc. Maybe a little too visible at times, but still really nice. And obviously you can kind of get a connection to the team who, again, that stopped playing basically before we even kind of started coming.
Yeah, definitely. It's like you hear your dads, your granddads talking about it. It's nice to have that sort of connection. Obviously, it was nice to have them on the pitch here the other week, and also you're talking about the film as well. It's great to see that, and it's nice to sort of, as you said, get a connection to it and sort of feel a piece of Goodison history, even though we weren't there to see it through our own eyes.
Yeah, very important to not skip over the two title-winning teams of the 60s as well. I mean, you got the likes of Colin Harvey, Howard Kendall, Alan Ball,
Yeah,
Johnny Morrissey, Joe Royal as well, of course, all stone cold Everton legends.
Yeah.
Howard Kendall, the biggest legend of them all, and that team as well is really rooted in history as well. I think the success of 15 years later does skip over the 1970 team and the 62-63 team as well a lot, but real players that in those sides that have gone on to just sort of bring Goodison with them as they've gone through their lives and through their playing careers. And it's just funny that we're stood here and this is the one place that's seen it all.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's kind of why we end up supporting such a historically good team. It's those guys who built the club, aren't they? It's great what obviously Dixie Dean, the lads did in the 30s, but I think as history goes on, it's always great to have another period of success in those guys, again, in the 60s and obviously in the 80s. They're what built the team, and that's why we can be so proud of Everton doing that. 9 league titles, 5 FA Cups, hugely successful team in English football, and it's those guys who did that. So.
Yeah, no, spot on. I mean, there was a little bit of a lull, wasn't there, in terms of success? We're talking about great teams that our grandparents, our dads, saw firsthand. We've been a little bit starved of quality, shall we say, in terms of heroes and legends at Goodison Park. But let's talk about it now. Who's your first hero of Goodison Park? Maybe even talk about your first game as well.
Yeah, well, my first game was a total write-off disaster. It was Preston, the Cup 2000. 4 or 5, and after about 2 minutes, I was sick everywhere. I can't remember where I was sitting, but I was sick everywhere. And we went home, and it was by the time we got home, the game had just about finished. But yeah, I think we won 2-0. I think McFadden or Carter, someone got a brace. But then after that, came back for the Blackburn game in the League Cup, got beat 4-1, but Andy Johnson scored from the penalty spot. And you say about Andy Johnson, he was probably my first hero, because the 3-0 Derby game, the little A celebration he used to do with the Arsenal goal on Mother's Day, he was such a good player for the 18 months. He obviously had a few issues with, there was Neil Warnock kind of had a big issue with him supposedly dive, and that kind of ruined his form a little bit, and he ended up having to go for a bit of a dry spell. But I think he was probably my first sort of bona fide Everton hero I loved watching, and was so disappointed when he left as well to go to Fulham.
Steve,
What about you, Ollie?
go on. You go first.
Well,
Steve.
I mean, like you said, starved of success, but it doesn't mean we can't have great days. I'm wearing the 94 shirt that we stayed up in against Wimbledon. Of course, there was a couple of bad relegation battles that we've seen recently as well. But my first game was actually during David Moyes' first tenure at Everton, November 2007. We were doing pretty well. We were in the UEFA Cup at the time. And it was a 3-1 win against Birmingham. I remember very, very vaguely. I was only about 6 years old. I remember sat in the upper Gladys Street up there. And what I can remember of it is, sitting in my seat, not really knowing the sort of the match day sort of routine of you stand up when you score, you sit down when you're not playing well, you cheer for the corner and stuff like that. I just remember my dad bought me a hot dog, and he said that was the only thing I was interested in for 90 minutes. And no, I remember Yakubu scoring after only a few minutes, and the whole of the upper Gladys just standing up around me, and all I could see was the back of people, and I couldn't see anything, couldn't see any of the pitch. Birmingham equalised, but Carsley and James Vaughan actually got 2 late goals in stoppage time, and made sure that my first trip to Goodison was a good one.
Brilliant. I remember my first one, actually. I was sat GT1 just down there, Lower Gladys, first time there. You've stolen my story about the hot dog. The hot dog bigger than me head. That was about the only thing I was bothered about. But I remember we played Fulham. We won 1-0. I think Fellaini scored. I can't remember the exact date or anything, but I remember just thinking, this is where I want to be. This is brilliant. And I remember my uncle Matt, who had a season ticket with one of his best mates down there. His best mate gave up his season ticket, and the season later, I had it. So that was it then.
Well, I mean, despite success or no success, I think you still sort of just look forward to being here, don't you? It doesn't matter, really. We can play terribly on the pitch, or we can play well on the pitch, but it's about meeting up with people. It's about the camaraderie of it. It's about the little sayings that you hear at the match, the people that you meet. I know there's a guy who sits in front of me, who I've sat in front of for the last 7 or 8 years, who gives high fives out every time there's a goal, and I'm going to miss that at Bramley-Moore, not being able to give him a high five. But it's a special place to be, and you can feel it today, being in it in its last week as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we've got to talk about further on now, as we were getting older. There's probably a few more players that might be cult heroes. There's a few that spring to mind, like Richarlison. Even more recently, Iliman Ndiaye. I think he's definitely become a cult hero. But is the one player that stands out for you that you go, yeah, he's my cult hero when I was growing up? Because I've got a couple in my head.
Well, there's only one man for me. It's Leighton Baines. It was always Bainesy for me. Cahill's up there as well. Tim Cahill I absolutely love, but to be honest, I just get the shiver up my spine whenever I saw Bainesy come out. And I remember being mascot at the derby at Anfield, actually over across the road, in 2013, and remember this whole Everton dressing room with David Moyes, Tim Howard, Phil Jagielka, and the only one I was interested in was Leighton Baines, and he was the one I wanted to speak to. Really, just he had the cool black slick backed hair.
With his guitar as well.
Yeah,
taking that on pre-season.
Yeah, it helped that he was the best left back in the league as well at the time. But he's really my one, Ollie. What about you?
I mean, for me, it was Kevin Morales, which sounds a bit mad, but I remember that first season when he came, he was just such a top player.
The goal against Stoke.
The goal against Stoke here, just scoring in this goal here. But there was plenty of other moments. But I remember there was one memory with Kevin Morales. I went to one of the stands outside on Goodison Road and got a little lapel badge and had a Kevin Morales 11 and wore that on my school uniform for the entire school year. So I think Kevin Morales for me was probably the one where I go, yeah, he was my first sort of, as I was growing up, getting to an age where I was going week in, week out as a season ticket holder. Kevin Morales was the one for me where I was, yeah, he was my favourite player, definitely. James, what about you?
Yeah, definitely. I think I love Bainesy as well. I think everyone loved Bainesy. You can't be an Everton fan and not love Bainesy because he's just so cool, but he was also so good. And he's one of a number of players. I think we're really lucky to kind of get the best out of them in terms of Baines, Jagielka, probably even like Stan, obviously Coleman. He's gone on to do his whole career at Everton, but Baines absolutely loved Morales, great for a couple of seasons.
We won't talk about his penalty miss it,
Yeah,
bouncing off this post.
That would involve both of them, didn't it? Yeah, that was horrendous. Yeah, but I think for me, I'd say Baines as well. I think more recently, I mean, Jordan Pickford's just been absolutely unbelievable. I know we're here just after the Fulham game, he's getting his song sung on the weekend, which was really nice. And I think the fact that, kind of unlike Baines, maybe in the sense that he's gone on and done so well with England, and he's like a genuine superstar. You know, if he'd won one of those Euros finals with England, we'd be sat here saying we've got the fella who was in goal when England won that major tournament for the first time. They won a major tournament for the first time in 60 odd years or whatever, and he is like a genuine superstar, as I say, in football, and he's just been so good for us. But I think that's something as well. I was thinking about it today, that the 1878's done so well, is that obviously in the lower Gladys we've had all the flags this season, and it's not just the 85 team that we can't really properly resonate with. It's players like Pickford, Brandthwaite, even like Decore or Ndai, and players who've got banners and personal sort of things in there, which is really nice, and it makes you think you can kind of still celebrate these players, even if they haven't won something, and it's, you can't have that kind of real connection to them because maybe they haven't done that. But at the end of the day, we've got to kind of play the cards of doubt, don't we? We've got to kind of support the team, and I think we can celebrate the likes of Pickford, Idrissa Gueye, Coleman, Baines, players who haven't won something with Everton yet. Hopefully, that changes, but we can still celebrate them because they're still good players, and they've given us a lot of good moments. And I think Baines and Pickford are probably my main two at least. Yeah.
So we've been talking about Leighton Baines, and you can't mention Leighton Baines' name without a certain left winger, Steven Pienaar. Obviously, coming to Everton in two different spells, coming back on loan from Tottenham Hotspur, a player that might be coming on loan from Tottenham Hotspur. We'll get onto that later in the video, but talk to me about Steven Pienaar. What are your memories of him?
Yeah, he was a great player, wasn't he? He was. I think people always talk about Moyes' team having the seal, but also the style, and he was a mix of both. He was such a tenacious player, and he scored plenty of good goals, and obviously his link up with Leighton Baines was just like legendary. And I think that's something we've always tried to replicate. You talk about probably have like Luca Dean, you always think is like Steven Pienaar equivalent, and it was maybe Bernard or whoever it might have been. It never quite worked out because Steven Pienaar was so good. And I remember when we got him back on loan, it was deadline day obviously, and I'd gone to bed, so it was the classic school the next day. So
you needed the Leeds tweet, like don't go to bed just yet, from the Everton Twitter account. But.
Exactly. But I woke up and there was no talk of it at all. And it was when we beat City 1-0, I think, when Gibson scored that night, and then you get in and you go to bed and there was no talk about it at all. And I woke up and we'd re-signed him, but obviously he came on loan as well to begin with, didn't he? So he came on loan, permanent loan. He signed 4 different times, and it's a shame that obviously when he left, it wasn't like he was playing loads. He really petered out for the last couple of years. He had so many injuries, but I was here for his last goal, I believe, against Hull at the park, and I loved the ball in for him. I think Barkley, I can't remember, or Morales or someone. He just sort of swept it in. It was a great goal, and he obviously ran to all the flags on the right here with the South Africa flag, and he was a great player for us, and someone who again we're still trying to find our new version of him, if you like.
It was absolutely chucking it down that day. I remember that game against Hull.
It was bad.
It was bad, and he went over.
Nice,
and then he went over just there. The South African flag was just there, and I remember him saying in his post-match interview, he said it was upside down. So he told everyone to leave him alone while he turned it back the right way. But there's some good memories, as you said. I think was it his first game back? Was it against Chelsea here?
Yeah.
Was it Strakolarski scored as well?
Yeah.
Or have I got that completely wrong?
Scored in that game.
They both scored.
2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 minutes in here at the park, and then Strakolarski scored like the worst goal I've ever seen in my life.
And started crying.
What a great game. Yeah.
One big moment for me with Pienaar was where we're stood right now was just about where I had my first half-season ticket as an 8-year-old, and I remember a free kick he scored against Tottenham, I believe it was, and it just went in that goal there. Just
Man City, I think, wasn't it?
Man City, it was. Yeah, it was. And I remember being just behind the net and seeing the ball at the back of the net, and not even seeing it come through the wall or under the goalkeeper, and really it just felt like you were watching a real quality player.
Yeah.
That's great. I think that was when Fellaini did the pirouette on
around
Bellamy, wasn't it? Yeah, that was good. Yeah. That was a good game, that. I don't think he even seen it going in because he hit it and he sort of had to look around the wall because again, probably one of the worst free kicks I've seen going. Like, it wasn't like a vintage one, but say it wasn't Leighton Baines, but again, great goal. He probably scored maybe 20, 25 goals for Everton, but they were normally special. He scored a great one at the Gladys Street against Reading when I was sort of right down by the side there and top corner from outside the area, and he was a really good player for us.
As you said, he didn't score a lot of goals, but he probably fits that mould of cult hero, similar to like I don't know, maybe an Abdoulaye Doucouré scoring goals like in big moments. I think he probably fits that cult hero mould rather than like a top class player that we've had over the years. But one player that's pretty similar to him in a similar situation at the moment at Tottenham Hotspur, and one that's been linked with a potential return on a loan deal this summer is Richarlison. Now, listen, I think he probably fits that sort of cult hero status. But talk to me about Richarlison. What are some of your memories about Richarlison here?
Well, he's a player with real quality that we haven't really had that cutting edge from the last couple of years that we've been missing him. He's a player who clearly loves Everton Football Club. You know, he sees here, he scored here a couple of times, and he absolutely hates it. You can tell.
But he always does it.
But he always seems to do it. But if we are lucky enough to see him back at Everton one day, then I'm sure everyone will give him the welcome back that he deserves, because we didn't really know if he was going to come or go when he was here. Of course, he scored in his final game against Crystal Palace as well. Scored one of the goals that night, and really sort of has cemented himself as, like you said, Ollie, like an Everton cult hero.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it was a difficult time when he was here, but if we won a trophy when he was here, he would have just been like the messiah for us, because he was brilliant anyway. But the fact, like, when he left and he came back, I think probably in the international break, and you had a picture of Jimmy Martin. He was there, like, his eyes were all red, like he'd been crying the whole time since he got back. And when he scored with Palace, he's like celebrating, he's like ripping his shirt off. And obviously the goal when Calvert-Lewin scored, he just collapses, because obviously he failed a fitness test. Like, I think it came out like not that long after the game, but it came out that he failed a fitness test, and he obviously wasn't actually fit to play in the game. But he played. He nearly scored in the first half. He hit the bar, our only sort of chance in the first half, I recall, and he was brilliant for us, and he scored some great goals. I think he got maybe 1 in 3 and a half. Something like that. His record was absolutely fine, and obviously we had a great song for him. And I think the fact as well that when he obviously scored here, as you mentioned, thankfully it didn't matter in the 3-2 win, but I think put on TikTok or Instagram after the game saying, like, you know, how nice it was to be back at Goodison Park one last time. And it's like, you never get that. You know, you don't even get that if it's like an English player, but to have like an outsider come into Everton and really take us on, even in such a like dark period, is just brilliant. And as I say, Steve, he had the quality to back it up, because we've had some players who care and you know, they want to play for the badge and all that, and it's great to see, and that's the minimum we kind of expect, to have someone to back it up with as much quality as he did. Scored some great goals, scored 3 or 4 goals in derbies. Yeah, he was brilliant. And I mean, I'm not saying how much sense maybe it makes him to come back in terms of injuries and all that, but I would absolutely love to see him play for Everton again. He was great for us.
I said that recently. I think you know, the head, the answer for your head is like, yeah, okay, he's had a lot of injuries. He's struggled in recent seasons to get, you know, a consistent amount of game time for Tottenham, but it's just the romanticism of Richarlison coming back. There's just something about him. I don't think there's many other players that an Everton fan would really take to him coming back with his injury record and sort of his age now. I think he's 28 now, but it's just Richarlison. That's the only way you can sort of describe the link.
Yeah, he's brilliant. I was just thinking as well, it was great to have like a player. I think he's number 30, wasn't he? Then he went to 7, and it was like he was our player for the big moments. He scored some great goals, some big goals. And again, as Stephen said, we've lacked so much quality, especially in wide areas the last couple of years. But he brought so much to us, and it wasn't like he played brilliantly every game, but he always gave his all, and just some great moments. And it's such a shame that obviously he had to move on. But again, I talked about Pickford earlier, about how you know, he's a player who, if he'd gone and won a tournament with England, his standing in the game would have gone up. But Richarlison was there in the Copa America winning team with Brazil, scored in the final, obviously got Olympic gold. He was like maybe not a proper superstar, but you see 6 months after he leaves, he goes to the World Cup, wins like the golden tournament, scored a few goals there. He was a really, really good footballer, and we were lucky to see him for a few years, even if, as I say, the team maybe didn't perform, but he most certainly did. Yeah,
no, spot on. Well, there's probably one elephant in the room that we're not addressing. With one, talking about Everton cult heroes, there's one that, you know, the fans are probably screaming at us to mention. It's Seamus Coleman, £60,000 from Sligo Rovers. What a servant he's been for us. Just talk to me about Seamus Coleman.
Well, Seamus, his early sort of time at the club, you know, we really saw him in the different positions. I think I remember Moyes used to put him on the wing sometimes, and really it was sheer determination, I think, that has made him such a cult hero at Everton, because he came into the squad £60,000. If a player signs for £60,000, you probably think maybe they're going to go out on loan, maybe, but you don't expect a player signed for that little amount of money to be as good as he's been. And Seamus really has just embodied everything that this club is about, and he's the only player who is really you could think of wearing the Everton captain's armband at the moment, because he's just synonymous with Everton, and I think supporters of other clubs will say that as well, because he's so widely respected across the game.
Yeah, no, you're spot on there. I think he just embodies everything that we want as an Everton fan. Hard work, commitment. He's been our best servant for so many years now. But also, I think what really nails it home for me is the way that other managers and people talk about him and talk about how good of a professional he is. I think it was after the Crystal Palace game here, and it was the Everton unseen bits from that game. And I remember Lampard came on to the pitch, and I think it was Coleman's two kids, and Coleman wanted a picture with Coleman's kids wanted a picture with Lampard, and he just went, "Your daddy is the best man I know." And I think that's just how highly he's spoken about in world football, and just amongst every manager that he's played for, every one of his teammates. I think that just embodies exactly what we want as an Everton fan, and just shows just the measure of the man, how good he actually is.
Yeah, but it's all that as well, and his quality as well. For 18 months, he was probably the best right back in Europe. And I don't think that's even I don't think that's being sort of hyperbolic. I think he was genuinely fantastic for maybe it was a year, maybe it was 18 months, sort of 13, 14. He got half a dozen goals, some great goals as well. I think Southampton here at the Gladys Street goes round. It was Luke Shaw, absolutely belt on the top corner. Away at Swansea, he scored a worldie. Yeah. He was just a brilliant goal against Leeds. I mean, that's his last goal he ever scored. I mean, that was just again, that was another goal which saved us that year. You think back to how big a game that was. It was massive, obviously, the Leeds, obviously being down there with us. So he was just brilliant. And I think the story as well, he comes over from Ireland, and he's such a small fee. Went to Blackpool, did really well there. Came back to Everton, morphed into a right back, and he's just been brilliant. And I think I saw a tweet about it in December when we played City, and he was starting at right back. And the last time he'd beaten City, he played right midfield 15 years before. It's he's just sort of transcended Everton, and you don't want to use the word legend because obviously, again, you mentioned it, but no one's won anything for so long and all that. But I think you can have legend, and you can have a modern day legend if you like. But I really do think you want to pick one player for the last 50 years to be a legend between him and Baines. And I think the fact that he's still here, he's captain. You really hope he can get some minutes on Sunday because he really deserves it. And he just seems like he's a legend of a man without question. Whether he's an Everton legend, maybe people will debate that, but I'd certainly have him in there. A
nice little penalty at the street ends just to round off the season at Goodison Park and give it to Seamus. In prime Everton fashion, he'd probably miss it, but no, that would be nice. That would be a nice way to cap it off. But yeah, I completely agree with everything you say. Seamus is he's probably the closest we've got to a modern day legend of Everton Football Club. Yeah. I think as well, obviously, we've not been so successful in terms of winning trophies in recent seasons, but these players, to be fair to them, they've given a lot to keep us in this division. There's a lot of players there that have really pulled us through some difficult times. You look at the likes of Abdoulaye Doucouré, maybe a little bit of a Marmite player after some of the comments this week, but you look at some of the goals he scored on this pitch here, dragging us through very, very difficult times. Jordan Pickford, the save here against Chelsea, keeping us in that game 1-0 up. There's so many moments where I think a lot of players in recent seasons can take a lot of credit because, it's been difficult being in 2-3 relegation battles consistently, not winning a lot of games, but I think there's a few moments here that you can definitely say they dragged us out of a very, very difficult period here.
Well, there's two moments, and unfortunately we're going to have to talk about them. It's the Palace game and the Bournemouth game. Yeah. Either of you at both of those?
Yeah, at both of them, yeah.
Yeah, well, the Palace game for me, I remember just being the darkest one for me. I mean, the Bournemouth one, I still say that I was a bit more confident going into it because it was just a simple win that one game and we've done it. Of course, Everton don't make it that easy. The Palace one, going 2-0 down at half-time and then knowing we had Arsenal away, it was tough. And I remember going downstairs at half-time, 2-0 down. And funny enough, if you actually look back on it, Arsenal's second is pretty much identical to Wimbledon's second in '94, which I never noticed. Yeah. I remember sitting on the floor in the concourse, head in hands, and
we've all been there.
It really was just a horrible 15 minutes.
Yeah,
but
it was.
Coming out and being there in the Gladys Street end, And once we got the second through Richarlison, you knew that something
was
magical
brewing,
was going to
wasn't it?
happen. And that was the first instance I've had of this ground swallowing you up, and you feel like you're in a pot of boiling water when it gets going. I mean, my dad tells me about Bayern Munich, but of course, none of us were there. But the Bournemouth one for me, you know, a little bit nicer, a little bit less.
I'm not so sure about that.
What about you?
I mean, if you're thinking of that Palace game, you've pretty much touched on all my emotions at half time. I was absolutely distraught. I remember, so my little ritual is I sit at that end, my mate sits at that end. I walk the entire end and meet him at that far end. And that walk, I think I just had my head down the entire time. I didn't speak to anyone. I didn't let on to anyone. And it was just the pure like distress of knowing that we had to go to Arsenal and get something, get a point, get 3 points. Whereas I think, as you said, the Bournemouth game, it was more clear cut. If we won, we were up. That was it. It was all in our hands. So I think I don't want to compare the two because I don't really want to go back to that dark time, that dark period. But I think, as you said, the Bournemouth one was probably a little bit easier because once we did get that goal, I think we had something to protect then and something to sit on. James, what are you thinking?
Yeah, it's sweating just thinking about it, to be fair. Yeah, they were. I mean, the Bournemouth game was just horrible. I was looking back at messages from that day just before. I remember putting like the WhatsApp chat. I said, "I'm flapping here, lads. I might not even go." Like I was considering not even. I was at the ground, I was outside. I was thinking I might not even go in, but it was just horrible. But again, I'm sat up with Gladys right behind the sort of left hand side, and when the ball fell to the core and he hit it, it was one of them where in that split second time the ball's in the net. You just know it's going in because it was like an arrow, wasn't it? And that was just unbelievable. I always think back to the shot Matthias Vineyard had.
What a save!
Yeah,
What a save from Jordan Pickford.
When they brought on Kiefer Moore, they brought him on. I'm thinking, oh god, he's going to absolutely dominate us in there, and he knocked it down to him. And it's one of them where you see it coming down, you think, oh no. And Pickford made it. It wasn't like the best save he made all season, but it was just a good save.
Yeah.
You know, we've been seeing so many goals like that at the Gladys Street. It feels like over the last few years. But I remember Dad always told me about Wimbledon when he went to the toilet at half time and there was a fella in there crying like an old man, and it was like I remember always thinking, wow, that must have been such a tough game, especially because of the park and obviously wasn't here where we stood now. This wasn't here, so the atmosphere would have been, you know, 3/4 of what it was, I suppose. But at half time, I'm just sitting there thinking like we are toasted.
You've got to give a lot of credit to Graham Stewart, of course, who scored in front of an empty park end, and he said there was just people in the trees. But my dad said about that game, he said he can remember the second one going in, and you could hear a pin drop in the stadium and just heard one woman just scream. And at that point he thought, this is it. And thankfully we've had a couple of bad ones in the last couple of years, but the last 2 years especially have been a bit more secure. Almost secured a 13th place finish now, hopefully above Manchester United and Tottenham. We'll have to get the win against Southampton to sort of confirm that. But the last couple of years, there has been some bits to smile about. The derby, particularly last year, was one for me.
We need to go on some positive notes, don't we now? We've talked about 2 relegation battles, but we might as well talk about some positive moments of the last couple of seasons. The derby is definitely one that springs to mind, but even the derby this season springs to mind as well. James Tarkowski rifling one into the roof of the Gladys Street net. But, you know, is there any other ones that stand out in your head that are like, yeah, you know, that was a good evening out, that was a good afternoon out?
Yeah, I think Arsenal, like his first game,
yeah,
and Tarkowski scored. Because again, it was like it reminded me a bit of Dunk's first game against Chelsea, where it was like blood and thunder, and we had Decore, Gay, Onana, and Iwobi, and like the midfield, McNeil playing. It was just all action, and we absolutely battered them that day in terms of they had basically nothing. We had some really good chances to score. And then obviously it was kind of the classic, you know, ball goes into the box from a corner. A little bit like, it always reminded me of Dunks against Liverpool when he first joined, and like that crashing header at the back post, winning against a big team, defying the odds, and like just thinking that way. Because again, I thought we were done. It was early, I think it was early February maybe, and I thought we were gone, you know, and came in, and obviously we had a great result there. That was brilliant. The derby last season was just immense. You know, I'd never even seen a score against Liverpool. I'd only been to a handful of derbies. I'd missed a couple when I had tickets and what have you, but that was unbelievable. And then derby this year, I mean, I can still viscerally remember the ball falling, similar to Vinya against Bournemouth. I can remember the ball just falling to Tarkowski's boot and thinking, well, this is going to hit the chest, you know, no man, go in, and then you see like took the net off. It was just unbelievable. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, but that game against Liverpool last season, it was just feel like a really big weight off our shoulders, to be honest, because I'm so used to them being good and us being bad and getting battered by them or trying to scrape a draw. The fact that we came and played them off the park here last season was just really good and really fulfilling, really for us more than anything, because we've been here and seen some bad times. But do you know one moment really from this season, maybe two, is the two North London clubs, the Tottenham game. We were 3-0 up and really it just felt like Moyes' Everton were back in a little bit. And then this season, I remember the Pickford save from Trossard, which was offside in the end, but I think that's still the best save he's made in an Everton shirt. Unfortunately, it was offside and it won't go down as a save even. But no, I think the last couple of years have been a little bit better, and hopefully going into the new stadium, we won't have any more of that messing about.
No, definitely spot on. I mean, the Derby one springs to my mind as well. 17 derbies I went to at this ground. Didn't see us win one. So that was a horrendous record. As you said, it was just the weight off your shoulders. I think that was the biggest thing, knowing that we'd stopped them from winning the league as well. Listen, we're a little bit bitter at times, us Evertonians, but I think we have to admit that. But stopping them winning the league and keeping us, pretty much keeping us up in the Premier League.
It felt like a bit of a phantom evening, that, because it just didn't feel real for most of it. And I was actually looking back on the team sheet on the way here, and the team we had out wasn't fantastic by any means.
Godfrey at right back and Arna on the bench.
Winning that game and still, even Diaz hitting the post here at this end was probably the moment where I thought maybe we might get a draw out of this. And I remember coming out of the ground absolutely just head over heels and bumping into Joe Royle and Seamus Coleman coming out of the stadium, which was just a little perfect way to round off the day. Yeah, but it was absolutely, really one of the best nights I've had at Goodison. But there's been some amazing ones, and like I said at the start of the video, it does matter a lot about the performance on the pitch, but sometimes it's just being here and soaking up the atmosphere and being with people that you love and who love Everton the same as you do as well.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I'm going to miss, to be honest. The lads that I sit round, I've sat round for pretty much all my time growing up at Goodison Park. It's going to be sad, really, because that's your constant every week coming to Goodison Park. That's your constant, and having that sort of taken away from you. And listen, we're going on to bigger and better things at Bramley Moor Dock. It's going to be a change of routine, but it'll never be Goodison Park and the lads that you've sat round for all these years and made all these memories with watching Everton.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to win on Sunday, because I was so frustrated when we didn't beat Ipswich the other week, because even though it wasn't the last game, it was the last 3 o'clock game, which is probably like the classic English football kick-off time, the one I probably enjoy going to the most. I love the night games, but I love the 3 o'clock games, because it's like the classic, I say, English football, everyone's playing, it's really good, and obviously got all the scores coming in and what have you, but we just have to win on Sunday. It doesn't matter who we're playing. In fact, we're playing statistically the second worst team ever in Premier League history in terms of points. We simply have to win that game, because that's what Goodison deserves. No, we'll all laugh and joke and say what it deserves is a ball going off someone's arse last minute and then winning the game like another Wimbledon-style goal. We'll all joke and say that, but what it actually deserves is
proper
team
send-off.
Performance, and getting not just a win, but winning by a couple of goals, and just so you can enjoy it and you're not flattening it by the end, because again, it would just be a nightmare if we finished the season and not the season, sorry, we finished Goodison's lifespan on it. Let's go out and get the win on Sunday.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'll put you on the spot now. You've got to nail down to one Goodison memory that's your favourite. Steve, we'll start with you.
It's probably the hot dog in the first game. I was thinking about it on the way here, and I was thinking about every sort of moment that I've had here, every game, what really stood out the most to me, and it was probably that moment, because even though I didn't know it, I was in a place that I was gonna be my church basically for the next sort of 18 odd years, and so really probably that moment is my first game, just because I've got one small little bit of memory of it left that I'm trying to remember, but I think that's what makes it even more special and magical for me.
James?
Yeah, it's difficult, because we don't want to celebrate like the relegation survivals, but there is like a sense of that goal did so much for us and it kept us up. You get the relief and everything, and you have the final whistle going against Palace, and like seeing the linesmen start to run onto the pitch when the whistle hadn't even gone, but the game's over, and it's like to enjoy that. But it's got to be Calvert-Lewin's goal in the derby, because it was again centre forward, the Everton number 9. Again, just talked about before, but the big fella cut up with the header. Again, where I'm sat up at Gladys, it was sort of perfect left hand side, and you're seeing it just go underneath the Liverpool goalie, and and it was bedlam. The guy sitting next to me got on the toilet. I think they were on the attack, and then I remember exactly how it happened. We countered, and then we won a corner, obviously right hand side, and then as we're all celebrating, he sort of jumps off from a couple of steps down to join in. But it was brilliant. Another good moment that we haven't actually mentioned was the FA Cup quarter final. That was genuine. That was not success, obviously. That was something genuine to shout and scream about. We got to the semi final, and that goal Lukaku scored. I mean, you talk about the team sheet against Liverpool. The team sheet that day was atrocious. I mean, we had like Tom Cleverley playing on the wing and all sorts. It was a disaster. But Lukaku just pulled someone out of nowhere against a subpar Chelsea team. But the Chelsea team who guzzle trophies, no matter how good they are, took on 4, 5, 6 players, goes round Goose Hiddink, even the Winslow, the team bus everyone and slots in. That was another kind of euphoric moment. So, but I'd say Cardiff Liverpool derby, to win a game like that is unbelievable.
Yeah, mine's a bit of a rogue one, to be honest with you. I think there's one game that I always think it has, fond memories. I have fond memories for, and it's the Man United 4-0 here under Marco Silva. That season, we were really weird. We went through periods of playing really badly, and then I think we had each of the big 6 at home in a row, and we got some really decent results in that time. But the Man United one in the sun, I think it was Bank Holiday weekend. Well, got the training in my shorts, and so the Richarlison overhead kick there, the Luca Dean volley at the Gladys Street end. It was just a really good day. A really good day to be an Everton fan.
I can tell you exactly when it was, Ollie. It was the day before payday, and I had about £5 left in my bank account, and I bought me and my dad a pint to share.
Brilliant.
Unfortunately, and it was probably the best half a pint I've ever had. 2-0 up, cruising against Man United, and it was Easter weekend. That's one that me and my dad always laugh about. Really, when we think about it. We tried to have the same moments against Ipswich last week, but unfortunately, we spoiled the party a little bit.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, that was my birth to that United game. But you talk about how poor we were at times that season. I've been offered the ticket probably 6 weeks in advance, and I was like, I'm going out the day before.
I'll be hungover. I'm not doing it.
I'll leave that. Thanks, Dad. And then it's like, well, we're like Brasilia, coming up to the game, and then obviously United they were really good as well. United at the time with Solskjaer, and then it all started to fall apart. And then it was just the perfect storm, and we scored 3 great goals. Walcott scored a nice goal. We nearly made it 5-0, and I think 5 just sounds better than 4, doesn't it? It would have been even better. But even though I was at home watching, sort of hanging out my arse, it was still a great day in the house at the very least, and obviously a brilliant game for us.
Well, the sun's come out poetically to end the video, I think.
It has. Well, that's all we've got time for today. Hope you enjoyed talking about our Goodison memories, talking through our Goodison heroes. But that is all from us. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll speak to you soon.